So let's use an example to illustrate the usage of interface. We are looking at the file converter class that we created before. This file converter class accepts a string of source file name, and it has two methods. Each accepts a target file name string. Then what it does is it will open up the two files, go through each line in the source file, and output a processing result, either to uppercase or get the input char count, and finally close the two files. So this file converter object we created before in our lab and homework. And these two methods works just fine. However, there is an issue with this implementation. You can see these two methods. Basically, the majority of the code are identical. The only difference is in the conversion. How you would convert the input line. What's the output of this file conversion? That's the only difference. So that which makes us think, is there a way that we can utilize the same code, the majority of a code, just making one change so that we can reuse this code? And the only difference is here, how you generate the output. This is, of course, the fundamental requirement for reusing the code. And if you think about code reuse, it's not only limited to your own code. You can also package this part, package all these parts, so that other people can use your code. All they need to do is provide you with a function, the conversion function, so that you will use their conversion function inside this code. And they will reuse your code and the framework, which has been tested and proved to be correct. Then they can do their own work. So the way we handle that is to create an interface. We create an interface called file line converter. And this file line converter has a process line method, which will accept the string of line with a string of line and create an output of string. Then we create an implementation of this file line converter called uppercase line converter, which will simply return the uppercase of the input line by line. So we're going to create a new method, which will not only accept a target file name, but also accept an interface. So I'm going to create a file here. Public, a method here, public void process file. This is pretty much the same header as the create uppercase file header, but we are also going to add a file line converter, FLC. And then we will copy everything here. The only thing we will change is here, instead of to uppercase, we will do FLC dot process line input line. So what's going on here is you get the target file, source file, you open the file, loop through the input file, read the line, and you ask the converter interface to process the line for you. Then you close the file after all lines are processed. So this file converter will make the change. And all you need to do here in the create uppercase is to generate a instance it should be called fine line converter. This should be defined as a fine line converter interface, FLC equals to new uppercase converter. Then you will run this process file by passing in the string, the target file name, and the file line converter. Right. And by utilizing this interface, now you can see we can also, I didn't implement the row char count converter, but you can do this on your own. And you can remove, basically remove all this just by adding one file converter implementation and change the create code, method code to 2 lines. Not only you can reduce your code and simplify it, you can also allow other people to implement this file line converter and later call your process file to create their own method and their own class implementation. So this is the power of interface. Now, let's say we have already created this line and I decide to add something more. Public void, I'm just giving it the crazy name, void try it out. Now that you can see, as I save it, uppercase line converter gets an error. Why? Because this is a new method, and this new method is not implemented this uppercase line converter. This is a big issue because a lot of times you should have an interface. Your library, you always expect your library to be upgraded to meet the user's latest need. But if you add any method to the interface, you will break all the existing class code that implements your interface. And this is huge impact. This impact is huge. That's why we have the default. We have this thing called default method, where you can have a default implementation. Let's say just system. You don't. Right. Once you have this default implementation, then your existing code will not be broke. Is still working, and your new code, whoever uses your new interface can implement this try it out method for their own benefit. So default method in the interface is defined after Java 8. It's used to help maintain the backward compatibility of existing code. Interface and abstract class are like more advanced topics regarding a package design or a Java program design, application design. So for this class, you need to understand interface, the definition of interface and abstract, why they are here and why they are defined this way. And when you see an interface, you need to know that you need to implement all the methods inside the interface definition if you ever want to implement that interface. And you need to know how to implement, basically writing the same code, copying this header and writing the same code in your own class. But you are not required to know how to design interface, how to design these methods.